BI in a box. The innovative way of exploring the value in your data. Now let's have work through how to deploy BI in a box. Moving right along into the deployment space. It is relatively simple to deploy BI in a box. Let me take you through a step-by-step process. Whether it be a full release, new version of BI in a box, or simply the release of a new widget, the same process is followed. Remember, BI in a box deployment package will be available on the partner portal and typically be either a zip or a 7-zip file. Here you will see the exact size of the zipped package, around 300 meg. This may increase over time as new widgets are made available and functionality is added. So, in the event that you put the link on your website, just be aware of the size of the zipped package, as this is what your customers will be downloading. I will not be doing the actual unzipping in this training video, as it can take some time. However, here you'll see the already extracted W3BI folder. You can extract this folder to a location of your choice, and as you can see, mine is actually an SD card that I have unzipped it to. You, however, can extract it to a USB drive, a PC, or a server as long as the destination drive has sufficient free space. Important to note at this point that this is a totally containerized environment, not leveraging off software on your USB, PC, or server. For those of you who have experience with platforms like Docker, this is similar. We have done this as clients may well be downloading and deploying BI in a box themselves. W3BI have developed the solution in a single user type environment or multi-user environments, up to 500 users. That is why we deploy BI in a box as a containerized offering. In fact, once deployed, you can move the W3BI folder to a new drive location within the organization. As long as the Sage 200 database is accessible from the new location, BI in a box will function normally. Two things to remember: always put the W3BI folder in the root of the drive you are deploying it to and never change the name of the folder. In a containerized environment, a lot of pre-configuration has been done and all pointing to the W3BI folder name, and not the drive it has been deployed to. Within this folder, you will notice this is the full containerized environment. Apache, MySQL, and PHP are present in the containerized environment. Everything that is required in order to run BI in a box, no other software needed. If BI in a box is deployed on a server and the server is upgraded or security patches are rolled out, this too will have no impact on the BI in a box deployment. Only make sure the W3BI folder remains untouched. Once the extract is completed, the folder size should be around 4.4 gig, so ensure the destination drive has sufficient capacity. The first step, post-extraction, is to start the container. There are two services that run within this container which need to be started, one being Apache Web Server, our open-source web server environment, and the other MySQL. What makes Apache attractive is that it is operating system and web browser agnostic. MySQL contains the BI in a box security layer. The first step, once you've extracted your folder, is to start the XAMPP control panel, and this by double-clicking on the XAMPP control executable. You will see that the executable automatically starts Apache Server and MySQL. Once the panel has started and both Apache and MySQL modules are highlighted green, the deployment is completely successful and you are ready to launch BI in a box. Important to note is that Apache is the browser interface, and if it does not start, you will not be able to launch your browser. You will notice that Apache is configured to run on port 84, which is not typically a port that is used by any web environment. Microsoft IIS typically runs on port 80 or port 8080. Generally, the only reason Apache or MySQL for that matter would not start is because there is something else running on the same deployed environment, utilizing the same ports. In order to resolve the port clash, go to the configuration section, find an open port, and update the configuration. If you go to the manual, under frequently asked questions, you will see that this issue is addressed. The command to verify whether port 84 is available or not available can be found here. Go into command prompt, Enter the command querying whether port 84 is available or not. It returns that there is something listening on port 84, which is correct. Apache is listening on port 84. Stop Apache and rerun the command again. You will now see it finds nothing running on port 84. The only time you should get this type of discrepancy is potentially when you're deploying it on a server. For information, we configure MySQL to run on port 3307, as the standard for MySQL is 3306. So, MySQL generally runs through 3306 and Apache can run on anything other than 80, as this port is typically reserved for IIS, so we do not configure these ports in our setup. At this point, you can close the control panel and the services will still run in the background, as we are in a containerized environment. The only time that these services will stop is when someone reboots their machine or reboots the server. However, you can go to the config environment and change settings so that Apache and MySQL auto start each time the PC or server is rebooted. As mentioned before, BI in a Box is not affected by any of operating system patches that get deployed. However, once they reboot, make sure that Apache and MySQL are up and running. If you hit the URL on port 84 and the page doesn't load, then you know that the services aren't running. Check the console, restart Apache, and MySQL and BI in a Box will load as per normal. The next step is to connect the BI in a Box deployment to your Sage 200 database, a Microsoft SQL Server database. This is a physical connect giving BI in a Box access to the Sage 200 database. Open your browser and enter localhost 84 to navigate to platform configuration. You can save this URL to favorites, giving the URL a more descriptive name, for example, BI in a Box. The page you now see can be customized with your branding, confirming your reseller status to the customer. The rebranding is done when W3BI creates your business partner deployment package and can include a logo and narrative. Before you can access BI in a Box, you need to complete the configuration. Click in the platform configuration, enter the required password, and click Login. The password required can be found in the documentation provided, section Connectivity Console Credentials, as shown here. Let me log in. A pop-up, New version of the production environment, is displayed. Click on the Ignore button as our underlying environment is self-maintaining, upgrading itself over time. Click on Edit Connection in the drop-down, and two environments will be displayed, DTG_SEC and DTG_PLF. DTG_SEC is our security environment. No action required here, and the second DTG_PLF is where the Sage 200 connection needs to be established. DTG_SEC is the MySQL database you would have seen in the BI in a Box container space, and DTG_PLF, you will notice, is a Microsoft SQL database. This is the connection that needs to be established to the Sage 200 database. Click on DTG_PLF. You will now see that a server name is required. Confirm the port is correct. 1433 is the port configured. Database name is required, as are the username and password. You can request these details from the person managing your Sage 200 database. The person may decide to create specific Microsoft SQL database name and credentials for BI in a Box, or simply provide you with the existing credentials. Hear how to test that you have connectivity to the database required. Open Microsoft SQL Server. I will use our Sage 200 deployment. I have the server name, my database username, my database password, and I should now be able to gain access. Important to note is that the user you want to use must have access to the identified database with, at minimum, read permission. No other permissions are required. Only read permission, as BI in a Box only reads information from the Sage 200 instance for reporting purposes, never writing back to the Sage 200 database. The database name required is the one highlighted here. This is the database name I need to enter here. I can either enter localhost or put in my server name. However, as everything resides on the same PC, localhost will suffice. Now click Test Connection. If that connection is not successful, it means BI in a Box cannot connect to your Sage 200 database based on the credentials that you have provided it. Talk to the person managing your database environment to resolve your Sage 200 database connectivity issue. Until this connection is successful, you will not be able to report from within BI in a Box. You will notice my test connection is successful. Click on the Save button to your Sage 200 database connection settings. So up to this point I have done the deployment, started the services, and hit the URL that took me to the landing page, created the connection to the Sage 200 database, and I can now log out, as this is all I need to do up to this point. If you call the same URL once again, my landing page now has access to BI in a Box, confirming that I have created my connection to my Sage 200 environment successfully. As I am able to access this page, I now know that everything is running from a container perspective, and I can now run BI in a Box. BI in a Box is up and running, deployment complete. The access the client now has, with the admin username and password provided in the documentation, allows them to access BI in a Box for the first time. When connecting BI in a Box, we'll try to connect to the partner portal in order to verify that this deployment with this partner ID has a current license. If it does not, this landing page is displayed, giving access to the payment gateway and the Sage company information only. The company information here is proof to the client that the deployed BI in a Box instance is configured to access their license 200 space and can be confirmed by querying their Sage 200 database. Information in the Sage deployed database is exactly the same as that from within the BI in a Box company information. To activate the license, the client now needs to subscribe. The client can choose to pay monthly or make a once-off annual payment. However, all subscriptions are for a fixed 12-month period. If you choose the annual payment method, W3BI will only invoice for 11 months of the subscription. The 12th month is free. Everything you have seen in this training session is available in the manual, where steps are described in detail. Please watch the admin and navigation training sessions. Until next time.